Have you ever looked at your lab results and felt that punch in your stomach the moment you see your creatinine creeping up again, even though you swear you're doing everything right? Because if you have, I need you to hear this next part carefully. Your kidneys may not be failing because of salt or meat or even age. They may be failing because of the rice you eat every single day. Yes, something so ordinary, so innocent, so healthy on paper that most people never question it for a second. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. What I'm about to tell you is the reason thousands of Americans are watching their kidney numbers decline year after year without understanding why. And by the time the truth finally reaches them, the damage is often so advanced that the window for recovery has almost closed. But you're here now. And because you're here, you're standing at the edge of a life-changing realization. Once you understand this hidden trigger, you can finally stop the silent attack happening inside your kidneys and give them the relief they've been begging for. So today, as your doctor, I'm going to pull back the curtain completely. I'm Dr. Mark Ellis, and in this video, I will show you the 3 types of rice that quietly protect your kidneys and the 3 that can destroy them faster than you ever imagine. And I'm not talking about vague advice or generic tips. I'm talking about exact choices, real patient stories, and the scientific evidence behind why one bowl of rice can help your kidneys heal, while another bowl can push you one step closer to dialysis without you feeling a single symptom. And if you stay with me for the next few minutes, you won't just discover what to avoid, you'll learn exactly what to eat, how to pair it, and how small changes can reverse years of silent damage. Because once you see how this works, everything about your kidney health suddenly becomes clearer. And that clarity, that understanding, might be the one thing that saves your kidneys in the years to come. When most people think of protecting their kidneys, they imagine giving up salt, cutting meat, or drinking more water. Almost no one thinks the answer could be something as simple as choosing the right kind of rice. But for those with weak kidneys, long-grain white rice often becomes the difference between a creatinine number that stabilizes and one that slowly climbs month after month. And this isn't just theory. It's something I've seen again and again in real patients who were doing everything right except this one small detail. Take Linda, for example. She's 62, careful with every bite she eats, and proud of how disciplined she is. When her creatinine kept rising, she felt betrayed by her own body. What else am I supposed to do, doctor? I've already cut out everything bad. But when I reviewed her diet, one thing immediately stood out. She was eating brown rice every day because she believed it was the healthier choice. And that's when the truth came out. Brown rice was silently overloading her kidneys with high phosphorus and potassium levels that her weakened nephrons simply couldn't handle. Once she switched to long-grain white rice, her creatinine dropped within weeks, not dramatically, but enough to prove that her kidneys finally had room to breathe. Scientifically, long-grain white rice contains only about 45 milligrams of phosphorus and 50 milligrams of potassium per cooked cup, barely half of what brown rice carries. When kidneys are struggling, those small numbers matter enormously. Less phosphorus means your bones don't get stripped of calcium. Less potassium means your heart stays in a safe rhythm. And less mineral load means your remaining nephrons can filter without drowning under pressure. White rice is easy to digest, low in anti-nutrients, and gentle on the bloodstream. It's simple. And for the kidneys, simplicity is survival. Now, you might be wondering if it really works, why don't doctors mention this sooner? The truth is, nutritional nuance often gets lost in general advice. But once you understand how sensitive weak kidneys are to mineral fluctuations, you begin to see why something as ordinary as long-grain white rice can quietly become a life preserver. And the best part, it blends seamlessly into meals without stress, without forcing you into foods you don't enjoy, and without that heavy feeling people get when they try to follow a perfect diet that never fits their real life. But here's where things get even more interesting. While long-grain white rice gives your kidneys a break, not all white rices behave the same way. And there's one type that not only protects your kidneys, but also stabilizes your blood sugar in a way most people never expect. But only knowing this isn't enough, because there's another factor waiting beneath the surface that affects millions of people without them realizing it. And while long-grain white rice gives your kidneys a much-needed break, there is another kind of rice that takes protection a step further, because it doesn't just lighten the kidney's workload, it stabilizes one of the biggest hidden threats to kidney health, your blood sugar. And that's where basmati rice quietly becomes a game changer for millions of Americans who struggle with both kidney issues and glucose swings, often without realizing the two are tightly connected. I'm reminded of Robert, a 63-year-old retiree, who came into my office exhausted not physically but mentally because every meal felt like a gamble. If he ate too little, he felt shaky. If he ate too much, his blood sugar spiked, and his creatinine followed shortly after. Doctor, it feels like no matter what I do, something goes wrong. But things shifted the moment we replaced his regular white rice with basmati. Within just weeks, his glucose readings flattened out, his creatinine stopped rising, and he finally felt in control again. The food didn't change, just the type of rice did. And here's why basmati works so differently. Its glycemic index sits around 50-58, while regular white rice can shoot above 70. That means basmati releases glucose, slowly giving your bloodstream a gentle rise instead of a harsh spike. For the kidneys, those spikes are like little earthquakes. They shake the delicate blood vessels and accelerate damage. Basmati prevents that. It contains more resistant starch, which feeds beneficial gut bacteria, reduces systemic inflammation, and protects the endothelial lining of the renal arteries. For someone with vulnerable kidneys, that's not just helpful, it's critical. But what people love most about basmati is how practical it is. It doesn't require strange recipes, restrictive diets, or complicated prep. Just rinse it, cook it with a simple 2-to-1 water ratio, and pair it with low-potassium vegetables like green beans or cucumbers. It fits naturally into your meals without feeling like you're sacrificing comfort or flavor, and that's exactly why patients stick with it long term. Because the truth is, the best kidney diet is the one you can actually follow, not the one that looks perfect on paper, but impossible in real life. And as helpful as basmati is, it also reveals a deeper truth about kidney health. The foods that protect you are rarely the ones plastered across magazine covers. They're the quiet, steady choices that keep your numbers stable day after day. But only knowing this isn't enough, because there's another factor, one that blends comfort, flavor, and kidney safety that most people overlook entirely, and it's waiting in the next part of our story. And while basmati rice brings stability, there's another variety that offers something equally powerful: emotional sustainability. Because kidney diets often fail not from lack of knowledge, but from lack of joy. That's why Jasmine rice, with its soft texture and naturally comforting aroma, becomes so much more than a food choice. It becomes the bridge that keeps people consistent, and consistency is the real medicine your kidneys depend on. I still remember Margaret, a 59-year-old woman who felt defeated before she even started. "Doctor, everything on this kidney diet tastes like punishment," she told me. Her biggest struggle wasn't the science, it was the loss of food that made her feel normal. So instead of forcing her into extremes, we made one simple shift. We replaced her heavy, nutrient-dense grains with Jasmine rice. Instantly, her meals felt familiar again. She stuck to her plan without resentment, and within weeks, her swelling reduced, her energy returned, and for the first time, she said, "I don't feel sick anymore." That emotional relief was just as therapeutic as the dietary change itself, and the science supports what she felt. Jasmine rice carries phosphorus and potassium levels similar to long-grain white rice, low enough that weak kidneys can filter without strain. It's also easier to digest than whole grains, giving the kidneys fewer byproducts to process. But beyond numbers, Jasmine rice helps people stay on a kidney-safe diet because it doesn't trigger diet fatigue. When food feels comforting, the brain releases dopamine. Lowering stress and chronic stress is a known contributor to faster kidney decline. In other words, Jasmine rice doesn't just protect your kidneys, it helps protect your willpower to heal. And it fits beautifully into everyday meals. Rinse it lightly, cook it with a 2-to-1 water ratio, and steam it for a few minutes after cooking for that fluffy, delicate texture. Pair it with low-potassium vegetables like cucumbers or green beans, and you get a nourishing plate that feels both safe and satisfying. This is the kind of food that helps people heal without feeling like they have lost their identity at the dinner table. And that psychological strength is something we rarely talk about, but it's often the deciding factor in who succeeds long-term. But even with all this, Jasmine rice reveals a deeper warning. Many foods that feel healthy can still overload weak kidneys if chosen incorrectly. And just when most people start feeling confident with their rice choices, that's when they unknowingly make the most dangerous mistake of all. But only knowing this isn't enough, because there's another factor lurking ahead, one that millions of people never realize, is damaging their kidneys every single day. Up to this point, we've talked about the rices that protect you. But now we step into far more dangerous territory because the foods that quietly damage your kidneys are often the ones praised the loudest. And brown rice is the perfect example of a health food that becomes harmful the moment your kidneys begin to weaken. Most people don't realize they're hurting themselves because brown rice has been marketed for years as the gold standard of clean eating. But what strengthens a healthy body can overwhelm a fragile one. Harold learned this the hard way. At 58, he was proud of his clean lifestyle. No processed foods, organic vegetables, and brown rice every single day. He believed he was doing everything right. But his lab results told a darker story. Phosphorus levels climbing, potassium approaching the danger zone, creatinine rising month after month. He sat in my office stunned as I explained that the very food he thought was protecting him was pushing his kidneys closer to failure. How could something healthy be hurting me? He asked. The answer was simple but rarely talked about. Scientifically, the issue lies in the outer bran layer of brown rice. It carries nearly double the phosphorus of white rice, around 80 milligrams per half cup, and significantly higher potassium. These minerals aren't harmful to healthy kidneys, but for weakened kidneys, they become toxic. Too much phosphorus triggers calcium loss from your bones and calcification in your arteries. Too much potassium can disrupt your heartbeat, and the kidneys already struggling begin drowning under the mineral load. On top of that, brown rice absorbs more arsenic from soil, a toxin that weak kidneys cannot eliminate efficiently. Suddenly, the healthiest rice reveals itself as a silent threat. Even when soaked or cooked to reduce minerals, the risk never disappears entirely. And the tragedy is that most people choose brown rice with the pure intention of getting healthier. They never suspect that this nutritional upgrade could be the very thing accelerating their kidney decline. This misunderstanding is what makes brown rice so dangerous, not because it's inherently bad, but because it's dangerously mismatched to the needs of a weakened kidney. And this is where things become even more alarming. If brown rice, a so-called superfood, can silently overload your kidneys, what about the rices that are even higher in minerals, even harder to filter, and labeled as ancient grains or premium health foods? But only knowing this isn't enough because there's another factor even more dangerous waiting ahead, one that many people trust completely without realizing the damage it causes. If brown rice is a hidden danger, then wild rice is the luxury trap, sleek, dark, expensive, and praised everywhere as a nutrient-dense ancient grain. People choose it thinking they're leveling up their health, but for anyone with declining kidney function, wild rice can unleash a silent storm. What makes it so dangerous is that it looks pure, premium, even medicinal. But inside those elegant grains is a mineral load that weak kidneys simply can't handle. Gregory is the perfect example. At 67, he lived by the rule that natural is always better. He swapped white rice for wild rice quinoa and other clean grains, trusting the health articles he read online. Yet within 6 months, everything went wrong. His phosphorus levels surged by nearly 40%. His potassium crept toward the danger line. His blood pressure spiked, and his kidneys were nearly overwhelmed. Sitting in front of me, he said something I'll never forget, "Doctor. I ate healthy. I did everything right. How did this happen?" And that's when we uncovered the truth. Wild rice wasn't nourishing his kidneys. It was suffocating them. Scientifically, 1 cup of wild rice contains around 150 to 200 milligrams of phosphorus and roughly 180 milligrams of potassium, 3 to 4 times more than long-grain white rice. For healthy kidneys, this isn't a problem. But for weak kidneys, it's like dumping weights onto a failing bridge. Excess phosphorus doesn't just disturb mineral balance, it contributes to arterial calcification, bone demineralization, and accelerated decline in filtration function. High potassium adds the risk of arrhythmias and cardiac stress. Combine the two and you get a perfect storm that slowly wears the kidneys down without making a sound. What makes wild rice even more deceptive is its marketing. It's labeled nutrient-rich, ancient, unprocessed, and heart-healthy. And while these claims may be true for some people, they are dangerously misleading for those with CKD. In kidney care, more nutrients aren't always better. In fact, sometimes they're the opposite of what your body needs. People think they're treating themselves to something elite, but to a struggling kidney, wild rice is an elite burden. Even mixing small amounts of wild rice into regular rice still exposes the kidneys to unnecessary mineral stress. And since the flavor is bold, people often eat larger portions without realizing the cumulative toll it takes. That's why so many patients like Gregory end up shocked by how fast their numbers decline. They weren't eating junk food. They were eating foods too powerful for a weakened organ system. But here's the thing, if wild rice, a highly praised premium grain, can do this much damage, imagine what happens when you combine high phosphorus, high potassium, and something far more dangerous, sharp oxalate crystals that can physically injure kidney tissue. But only knowing this isn't enough, because what comes next is even more alarming, and it's something millions of people consider a superfood without realizing the hidden threat inside. And if wild rice is a luxury overload, then black rice is the silent assassin, beautiful, glossy, praised everywhere as an antioxidant superfood, yet hiding one of the most dangerous compounds for anyone with weakened kidneys, oxalate. People choose black rice thinking they're cleansing their body, boosting longevity, or doing something elite for their health. But for kidneys that are already struggling, black rice can feel like swallowing glass. Teresa, a 61-year-old woman full of optimism and discipline, fell right into this trap. She found an article celebrating black rice as the forbidden grain of ancient royalty, packed with anthocyanins and anti-aging benefits. Inspired, she swapped her daily rice for black rice, believing she was giving her kidneys the royal treatment. But within just 3 months, her creatinine shot up, her eGFR dropped below 25, and imaging revealed oxalate crystals forming inside her kidneys. She couldn't understand it. I avoided sugar. I avoided junk food. I ate clean, doctor. How did I still get worse? The painful truth was that her clean eating was cutting her kidneys from the inside. Here's the science. Black rice contains some of the highest oxalate levels among grains. When oxalate enters the body, healthy kidneys filter it out, but weak kidneys can't keep up. Instead, oxalate binds with calcium and forms sharp crystals, tiny shards that scrape, inflame, and scar kidney tissue. This internal damage accelerates the decline of kidney function, even if the person feels perfectly fine on the outside. To make matters worse, black rice is also high in phosphorus, around 180 milligrams per cup, and potassium can reach up to 220 milligrams. This trio of oxalate, phosphorus, and potassium becomes a triple threat that weak kidneys simply can't defend against. And the most dangerous part, black rice still looks healthy on paper. It's rich in antioxidants, fiber, and phytonutrients, everything mainstream wellness culture celebrates. But the nutritional profile that benefits healthy people becomes catastrophic for someone with low filtration capacity. That's why so many patients like Teresa deteriorate despite eating perfectly. They didn't choose bad foods. They chose foods mismatched to their kidneys' reality. Even mixing black rice with white rice doesn't eliminate the risk. The oxalate load remains. And since these crystals physically injure kidney tissue, even tiny amounts can accumulate over time. That's why kidney specialists warn against high oxalate foods for anyone with declining function. They create damage you can't feel until it's already severe. So if black rice, a so-called superfood, can accelerate kidney decline this dramatically, what does that mean for the rest of your diet? And more importantly, how do you rebuild a safe, kidney-friendly meal plan without feeling deprived or overwhelmed? But only knowing this isn't enough, because the next part reveals something even more critical. The protein choices that can either help your kidneys recover or quietly push creatinine higher without warning. When you step back and look at all 6 types of rice side by side, something becomes painfully clear. Kidney health isn't determined by dramatic lifestyle changes. It's determined by the quiet choices you make every single day. Long grain white rice, basmati and jasmine, give your kidneys room to breathe, room to rest, and room to recover. Brown rice, wild rice, and black rice, on the other hand, turn every meal into a filtration battle. Your kidneys aren't strong enough to win. And the tragedy is that most people don't choose the wrong rice because they're careless. They choose it because they're misled into believing it's the healthier option. But what your kidneys need isn't the food that looks impressive on a nutrition label. They need the food that matches their true capacity. They need simplicity, gentleness, and steadiness. That's why the right rice becomes more than a carbohydrate. It becomes a form of protection. And the wrong rice becomes more than a mistake. It becomes a slow, silent injury repeated meal after meal. Once you understand this, your entire view of kidney care shifts. You realize healing isn't about restriction. It's about precision. It's about choosing foods that work with your kidneys, not against them. And yet, even if you choose the perfect rice, your kidneys still depend on one more factor, something just as important but often overlooked. Because while rice determines how much strain you place on your kidneys, protein determines how effectively your body can repair and eliminate waste. And for people over 50, the difference between the right protein and the wrong protein can be the difference between stabilizing creatinine and accelerating kidney decline. But only knowing this isn't enough, because the next part reveals the real turning point, the protein choices that decide whether your kidneys continue to struggle or finally get the chance to recover. At the end of the day, I want you to remember one thing: your kidneys aren't giving up on you. They're simply asking for a little protection, a little patience, and a few wiser choices. And the fact that you're here listening, learning, and trying to understand your health, that already puts you ahead of where most people ever get. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but it absolutely does happen when you give your body the right conditions to recover. So take this video with you. Save it, come back to it, share it with someone who might be quietly struggling the same way you were. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel and turn on notifications, because I'm here every week breaking down real medical knowledge into simple, practical steps that protect your kidneys and your long-term health. You deserve information that empowers you, not confuses you, and my goal is to make sure you always have access to the most up-to-date, trustworthy advice. And before we end, I want you to hold on to this hope your kidneys can still improve. Even small changes, choosing the right rice, adjusting your protein, listening to your body, can shift your numbers in the right direction. You don't need perfection, you just need consistency. I've seen patients in their 50s, 60s, even 70s turn their labs around with steady, thoughtful habits, and there is absolutely no reason you can't be one of them. Your next meal is another chance to support your kidneys. Your next choice is another step toward feeling stronger. And your journey doesn't end here. I'll be right here beside you, guiding you through the rest of it. Stay hopeful, stay committed, and remember your kidneys are listening to every act of care you give them.